Rena walked slowly across the wide barren land. Her steps were heavy, her throat dry, and her body weak. The planet stretched around her in endless silence. Dust rolled in the air with every faint wind, and broken rocks rose from the ground like the bones of a long-dead world. She had been walking for days with almost nothing to eat. The little water she had found earlier in a cracked metal container had already been finished. Hunger and thirst pressed on her, but her will kept her moving. She had once been part of a group. They had called themselves rebels, fighters who stood against rulers that used fear and control. Rena had been younger than most of them, but her voice had been sharp and her heart stronger than many. She had spoken against cruelty, she had marched in the streets of her home colony, and she had believed in freedom. But freedom had a price, and now she was the one left behind. The rebellion had been crushed. Soldiers had filled the streets, machines had thundered over the ground, and people had screamed. Rena had run with others, trying to escape, trying to hide, but chaos tore them apart. When the dust cleared and the enemy left, she found herself alone on this alien world. She had no ship, no signal, no food, and no path back to her people. The planet was not empty, though. Strange marks on the ground told her that machines had once moved here. Tall structures broken and half-buried hinted at old battles or forgotten colonies. Sometimes she thought she heard the faint hum of energy deep under the surface, but whenever she searched, she found nothing. It was as if the planet itself had died long ago, leaving only silence and ruin behind. Still she walked. She remembered the words of her father before the rebellion. He had told her that life was not only about breath but also about spirit. He had said that if her spirit stayed strong, she could rise even when her body fell. Rena kept those words in her heart. Her lips cracked as she whispered to herself, "I will not stop." She pressed on until the light of the red sun began to fade. The sky turned into a dull mix of dark orange and gray. Nights on this world were colder than she had imagined. She found a hollow space between two rocks and crawled inside for cover. Dust gathered on her hair and clothes, and she shivered. She had no blanket, no fire, only her thin jacket. Sleep came slowly. Her stomach turned with pain, and her dry mouth burned. When she closed her eyes, memories of her lost friends filled her. She saw their faces, their laughter, their hope. One by one, she imagined them vanishing into shadows. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. Her body had no water to give. Morning came with a pale light. The sun rose again, casting sharp shadows on the ground. Rena forced herself to stand. Her legs shook, but she leaned on the rock until she found her balance. She searched the land for anything to eat. She found a patch of strange gray plants near a shallow ditch. Their leaves were thin and dry, like paper. She broke off a piece and tasted it. It was bitter and hard, but she forced herself to chew. It gave little strength, yet it was better than nothing. She walked again, this time toward a ridge she had seen far away. She hoped that from the top she might see water or shelter. Each step was heavy. The ground was rough, full of cracks and sharp stones. Dust clung to her skin, covering her like a second layer. By midday, she reached the base of the ridge. Her breath came fast, her chest heavy. The climb looked steep, but she told herself she could do it. She dug her hands into the rough rock and began to climb slowly. Her fingers bled from sharp edges, and her arms trembled, but she did not give up. After long effort, she reached the top. From there, the view stretched wide. Empty land rolled in every direction. Broken metal pieces glimmered faintly in the distance, perhaps the remains of ships or machines. To the west, a faint dark line marked what looked like another ridge, taller than the one she stood on. To the east, she saw nothing but flat land and dust storms. Her heart sank, but she refused despair. She chose the west, hoping the taller ridge might hide caves or some sign of life. She started walking again. As she moved, her mind drifted back to the rebellion. She remembered the fire in her heart when she had first stood in front of the crowd, speaking against the rulers. Her words had been simple, but they had carried truth. She had shouted that fear would not last forever, that people could stand together. For a moment, she had believed change was possible. Now she wondered if her words had been foolish dreams. But then she remembered something else. Even if her voice had been silenced, the spark had been real. She was still alive, and as long as she lived, that spark would not die. She clenched her fists and pushed herself forward. By late afternoon, she stumbled across more wreckage. Twisted metal beams stuck out of the ground, and shattered panels lay half buried in dust. She searched the pieces, hoping to find something useful. Most of it was broken beyond repair, but she found a small metal container under one beam. Inside was a faint powder, perhaps dried food from long ago. She tasted a pinch. It was stale but not poisonous. Relief washed over her as she ate small amounts, enough to ease her hunger for now. Night came again, and she sheltered under the remains of a broken hull. The metal was cold, but it kept the wind away. She wrapped her arms around herself and tried to rest. She dreamed of stars, of ships flying free across the galaxy, of voices calling her name. Days passed in this harsh rhythm. She searched, found little, ate scraps, and pushed on. Her body grew thinner, her skin dry, but her will still burned. Each morning she told herself she would see another day. One evening, as the sun sank behind the tall ridge she had chosen, she heard a sound unlike the usual wind. It was faint but clear, a low humming that came from above. She looked up and saw a small light moving in the sky. At first she thought it was only her tired mind imagining things, but the light grew brighter and steadier. It was not a star. It was moving too fast, too close. Her heart raced. Could it be a ship, a patrol, a rescue? Her weak legs carried her forward as she waved her arms. She stumbled, fell, and rose again. She shouted though her voice was cracked. The light in the sky turned, and for the first time since she had been left behind, hope flared inside her chest. She did not know who was coming or what would follow, but she knew she was not forgotten after all. The light in the sky grew brighter as Rena stood on the ridge, her arms weakly waving. Her heart beat fast with fear and hope together. She had been alone for so long that her mind doubted if this was real. The hum of engines reached her ears, breaking the silence of the wasteland. She sank to her knees, too tired to keep standing, but she did not stop watching the light. The ship descended slowly, its shape becoming clearer. It was small, not a warship, but a patrol craft or a rescue vessel. Its silver body shone faintly against the dull red sky. Dust blew in all directions as it landed near her. Rena covered her face with her arm, coughing from the sudden storm of sand. The ship's ramp opened, and a figure stepped out. He wore a suit that protected him from the rough air. In his hands he carried a case marked with a red cross. His movements were careful, not hostile. Rena stared as he walked closer. The man knelt beside her and pulled off his helmet. His face was pale from long space travel, his eyes calm but sharp. He spoke in a gentle voice. "Stay still. You are safe now. Rena tried to answer, but her throat was too dry. Only a weak sound escaped her lips. The man opened his case and pulled out a small water pack. He pressed it gently to her mouth. The cool liquid touched her tongue, and her body shivered with relief. She drank slowly, each sip easing the fire in her throat. Good, the man said. Do not rush. You have been without water for too long. When she had enough, he gave her a small piece of soft food. It tasted plain but filled her empty stomach with warmth. Tears touched her eyes, not from pain but from the sudden kindness. Who are you? She whispered at last, her voice faint. My name is Daniel, he replied. I am a medic with the human fleet. We were passing this sector when I picked up a faint signal. I followed it here. And you are Rena, she said, her lips trembling. Daniel nodded. Rena, you are safe. I will take care of you. He checked her pulse, her eyes, her breathing. His hands were steady, his face focused. He wrapped a light cloth around her bleeding fingers, cleaned the dust from her wounds, and gave her more water. Rena watched him with tired eyes. For the first time in many weeks, she felt the weight of survival lift slightly from her shoulders. When Daniel helped her to stand, her legs shook. She leaned on him as he guided her toward the ship. The ramp felt like a bridge into another world. Inside the vessel, the air was warmer, cleaner. The hum of the engines was soft, and faint lights glowed on the walls. Daniel laid her on a narrow bed inside the medical room. Machines beeped gently as he checked her health. He gave her an injection to ease her weakness and placed nutrient packs beside her. You will need rest, he said. Your body has been through more than it should. Do not worry. I will not leave you. Rena closed her eyes for a moment, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. She whispered, Why did you come for me? Daniel paused. Because no one should be left behind. And because I am a medic. My duty is to heal. For a while, silence filled the room. Only the sound of the machines broke it. Rena drifted between sleep and wakefulness. In her dreams, she saw stars again, not just dust and emptiness. When she woke later, Daniel was sitting nearby, writing notes on a tablet. He looked up and smiled slightly. You are stronger already. That is good. Rena shifted slowly on the bed. I thought I would die out there. I thought no one would ever find me. You survived longer than most could, Daniel said. That shows strength. Tell me, how did you end up here? Her voice lowered. I was part of a rebellion. We tried to fight our rulers. They sent soldiers, machines, fire. I ran. I thought others had escaped too, but I was left behind. I searched for food, for water, for shelter. But the planet gave nothing. Daniel listened without judgment. You held on, even when all was lost. That is not something to forget. Rena looked down at her hands. I was rebellious, yes. I spoke loud. But what did it matter? They crushed us like nothing. My people are gone, and I was just waiting to disappear. He leaned closer, his voice steady. It mattered because you resisted. Even if you stood for a moment, you stood. That is what keeps hope alive. Her eyes filled again. She turned her face away, not wanting him to see her weakness. Yet his words sank deep inside her heart. Over the next hours, Daniel cared for her with patience. He changed her bandages, gave her balanced meals, and encouraged her to drink more water. Each small act of kindness built her strength. But outside, the planet was not silent. The ship's sensors picked up movement in the distance. Old patrol drones, still active from the time of her rulers, were roaming near the ridge. Their signals were faint but growing closer. Daniel studied the readings with concern. It seems your enemies left machines here. They are searching. If they find us, there will be trouble. Rena's heart tightened. They will kill me if they know I survived. And they may attack you too. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. Do not fear. We are not helpless. This ship is small, but it can move quickly. Still, we must be careful. As the hours passed, the hum of engines outside grew louder. The drones were drawing near. Daniel prepared the ship for takeoff, but the dust storm outside made flying dangerous. He looked at Rena, who had gathered enough strength to sit up. You found me, she said softly. But maybe I brought danger with me. Daniel shook his head. Saving you was not a mistake. Whatever comes, we face it together now. The words gave her courage. For the first time since she had been abandoned, she felt she was not alone. That night, the drones' lights glimmered faintly outside the storm. Their shadows moved across the land. Inside the ship, Rena and Daniel sat in silence, waiting, listening to the sound of the storm and the machines. She looked at him and whispered, if they attack, will we survive? Daniel met her gaze without fear. We will. Because we must. And so the night stretched on, filled with tension and the promise of struggle. Rena no longer felt like a forgotten voice on a dead planet. She had been found, and that changed everything. The storm outside raged through the night. Dust slammed against the hull of the ship, making the walls shake. The faint sound of machines carried through the wind. Rena sat on the narrow bed in the medical room, her hands clenched tight. She had faced hunger and loneliness for many days, but this was different. Now there was something near, something that wanted to finish what had been left undone. Daniel moved between the control panel and the window slit. He watched the glowing dots of the drones as they drifted across the ridge. His face stayed calm, but his eyes were sharp. They are scanning, he said. They search for signals. If they find us, they will not leave us alone. Rena pulled her thin blanket closer around her shoulders. They were left here by my rulers. Machines with no mercy. They do not care if someone is weak or dying. If they see me, they will destroy me. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we must make sure they do not see you. The hours passed with tension pressing on both of them. The storm finally began to fade, leaving silence broken only by the faint whir of the ship's systems. Rena moved closer to the small window, her eyes catching the glow of a drone light moving across the plain. She whispered, I used to fear silence. I thought noise meant life. But now even silence feels heavy. Daniel placed a hand on the window frame. You survived this silence. That makes you stronger than many. But strength alone will not stop what is coming. She turned to him. Why are you so calm? You do not even look afraid. He gave a small smile. I have been in battles before, Rena. I have seen fear. If I let it rule me, I cannot help anyone. A medic must stay steady. Her lips pressed together. She wanted to believe in his steadiness, yet her heart beat fast. Suddenly a sharp sound filled the air. The drone nearest to them had sent out a pulse of scanning energy. Lights on the ship's control panel flashed. Daniel moved quickly to block outgoing signals. They will think we are just another piece of wreckage, he said firmly. But we cannot stay here forever. When the sun rises, their scan will be stronger. Rena swallowed hard. Then we must move before morning. He looked at her and saw determination in her eyes, though her body was still weak. Are you ready for that? I am not ready, she admitted. But I cannot hide forever. Daniel nodded. Then we act together. He prepared the ship for a silent lift. The engines hummed softly, adjusted to minimum power. The vessel rose gently from the ground, dust falling away from the landing pads. Rena gripped the edge of the seat as the floor trembled. Through the window, the drones turned their lights. One of them detected motion in the storm's tail and began to follow. Soon two more joined. Daniel pulled the ship higher, weaving between ridges to hide. They are faster than I thought, he muttered. Hold tight. Rena's breath caught in her throat as bright beams shot past the ship. The drones were firing small charges, testing the air. One strike shook the hull. The ship swayed, alarms flashing. Daniel's hands moved quickly over the controls, steering them out of the direct line of fire. Rena cried out, we cannot outrun them forever. No, Daniel said. But we can outsmart them. He turned sharply, flying low across a broken canyon. The drones followed, their lights cutting through the shadows. Rena felt fear twist in her stomach, but she also felt something else. She trusted him. The canyon walls closed in around them. Daniel slowed, guiding the ship carefully between sharp rocks. The drones darted overhead, trying to match the turns. One miscalculated and smashed into the stone wall, breaking into pieces. Sparks rained down into the canyon. Rena gasped. One is gone. Daniel gave a short nod. Two remain. We must make them lose us. He powered down the ship's lights and guided it deeper into the canyon's maze. The last two drones hovered above, sending pulses down, searching. Their glow flickered across the walls like eyes in the dark. Rena sat silent, her body tense, until finally the sound of the drones faded. Daniel waited a long moment before allowing the ship to rise again. They came out of the canyon into open land where the red sun had begun to rise. Rena let out a deep breath she had been holding. We escaped. For now, Daniel said. But they will search again. We need shelter, somewhere safer than open ground. She thought for a moment. There are old outposts in the west. I saw them when I searched for food. Broken buildings, maybe from an old colony. If anything remains, we can hide there. That is where we will go, Daniel agreed. The journey took most of the day. Rena rested in the medical room while Daniel guided the ship. She drank water, ate small meals, and tried to gather strength. When she returned to the control room, she found him scanning the horizon. There, he said, pointing. In the distance stood the remains of an outpost. Tall towers leaned at strange angles, walls cracked, roofs fallen. Yet some structures still stood, silent but not fully broken. The sight gave Rena a strange feeling, as if ghosts of the past watched them. The ship landed near one of the larger buildings. Daniel helped her outside. The ground was littered with rusted metal and broken wires. A faint wind whistled through the gaps. This place is empty, Rena whispered. Empty is good, Daniel replied. Empty means safe, for now. They entered the building. Inside, dust covered everything. Old screens lay broken, chairs rusted, doors half open. Yet Daniel's eyes lit with purpose. We can use this. The walls will shield us from scans. The materials here may help repair my ship. Rena walked slowly through the hall. Her fingers brushed over faded markings on the wall. She imagined the people who once lived here, who had worked and laughed before it was all abandoned. "It feels strange," she said softly. "Like stepping into someone's memory." Daniel looked at her with quiet respect. Memories matter. Even ruins tell stories. They began setting up a small shelter inside the outpost. Daniel carried supplies from the ship, arranging food packs, water, and medical tools. Rena helped as much as she could, gathering pieces of old fabric and metal to cover gaps in the walls. Working side by side gave her strength. When they paused to rest, she sat across from him. "You came here for me, though you could have ignored the signal." "Why?" he answered simply. "Because every life matters. If I had flown past, I would have carried that weight forever. I cannot heal everyone in the galaxy, but I can heal the one I find." Rena lowered her gaze. "I was forgotten by my people. Left behind. Yet you, a stranger, gave me water and life. I do not know how to thank you." "You do not need to," Daniel said. "Living is enough." For the first time, Rena smiled faintly. It felt strange on her lips, but it was real. Night fell again, and they lit a small lantern inside the outpost. The building groaned in the wind, but the walls stood firm. Outside, the faint sound of drones drifted across the plain, still searching. Inside, Rena and Daniel sat together, sharing quiet words. She told him stories of her rebellion, of her friends, of her father's advice about spirit. Daniel listened with patience, nodding at her every pause. Then he told her of his travels, of worlds he had visited, of people he had saved. His voice was steady, not proud, simply honest. In that fragile moment, trust grew between them. Rena no longer felt only like a rebel left behind. She felt like someone worth saving, someone who still had a place in the galaxy. As she drifted into sleep under the broken roof of the outpost, she whispered to herself, "I am not forgotten anymore." And Daniel, watching over her, whispered back, "No, you are not." The old outpost stood like a skeleton against the red sky. Its walls leaned with age, its towers broken, but for Rena and Daniel it was shelter. The cracked walls blocked the wind and gave them a place to rest. Yet both knew it was only a pause, not safety. The patrol drones were still out there, hunting. Morning came with a faint orange light shining through holes in the roof. Rena sat near the doorway, staring at the horizon. She had slept, but her sleep had been restless, full of shadows chasing her. Daniel entered with a small container of heated food. "Eat," he said gently. "You will need strength today." She took the pack and ate slowly. The food was plain but filling. Her body had been starved for so long that even the smallest meal felt like energy. She glanced at him. "Do you think they will find us soon?" He nodded. "It is only a matter of time. Machines do not tire. They will search until they detect something. We must prepare." Rena looked around the ruined hall. "Prepare with what? The walls are broken. The roof is half gone. We have nothing but scraps." Daniel's eyes were steady. "Scraps can be used. A medic learns to make tools from what is at hand. We will turn this ruin into protection." Together they searched the outpost. They found metal sheets lying on the floor, wires hanging from the ceiling, and shattered panels. Daniel explained how some parts could be used to strengthen the walls. Rena helped him drag the pieces and set them into place. Her arms ached, but she forced herself to keep moving. As they worked, Daniel spoke. Machines are clever, but they follow patterns. If we break their pattern, we can survive. How do we break them? She asked. By making them see what is not there, he said. He showed her how to set old panels into the sand to reflect heat, creating false signals. He placed wires near the entrance to spark when touched, like traps. He even rigged one of the broken consoles to send out a faint hum, drawing scanners away from the real ship. Rena watched him closely. You are a medic, but you work like a soldier. He paused for a moment. I was not always a medic. Once, I trained for war. But I chose healing instead. Even so, I remember what I learned. The sun rose higher as they prepared. Sweat gathered on Rena's face, mixing with dust. She felt both tired and alive. Working gave her purpose again. By midday, the sensors on Daniel's wrist beeped. He frowned. They are near. 3 drones. They are moving in a wide circle. Rena's chest tightened. 3. Can we fight 3? We do not fight them with strength, Daniel said. We fight them with mind. Stay close to me. Do not panic. The first sign of the drones came as faint humming in the sky. Their lights pierced through the dust like sharp eyes. Daniel crouched near the doorway, guiding Rena behind him. The traps they had set were silent, waiting. The first drone moved directly above the outpost. It scanned downward with a beam of light. The beam caught one of the false panels outside, and for a moment the drone focused there. A loud spark burst from the wires, tricking its sensors. The drone fired at the false signal, striking empty ground. Daniel whispered, "Good. That is one distracted." But the second drone circled wider and came toward the ship hidden near the back wall. Its scanner pulsed dangerously close. Rena felt fear rise in her throat. She whispered, "They will see it." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Not if I move first." He grabbed a small handheld device from his case. It was a flare used for emergency signals. He aimed it through a crack in the wall and fired. The flare shot into the sky, glowing brightly. The second drone turned sharply and chased the false light, leaving the ship untouched. Rena gasped. It worked. "Too distracted," Daniel said. "One remains." The third drone was slower, more cautious. It hovered low, scanning the doorway. Its beam lit the room, revealing both of them. Rena froze, her heart racing. The drone tilted, preparing to fire. Daniel moved fast. He pulled Rena down and pressed a button on the broken console. The hum grew louder, releasing waves of energy. The drone's sensors flickered, confused by the sudden burst. It fired, but the shot hit the wall above them instead. Dust rained down, but the wall held. Daniel seized a metal rod and thrust it upward through the doorway as the drone came closer. Sparks burst when the rod struck its underside. The machine whirled, spinning out of control before crashing into the sand outside. Smoke rose into the air. Silence followed, broken only by Rena's heavy breathing. She stared at him in shock. "You destroyed it?" Daniel dropped the rod, his chest rising and falling. "One down. The other 2 will return. We must move quickly." They rushed to gather supplies. Rena carried water packs while Daniel secured medical gear. Their ship was still hidden, but the danger was not over. Already the distant hum of the remaining drones returned. As they reached the ship, Rena stopped and turned. "Why do they keep chasing? We are only 2 people." Daniel looked at her with seriousness. "Because machines are not built to choose mercy. They were given a command, and they will follow it until they break. She felt anger burn inside her. That is what our rulers wanted. Obedience without question. That is why we rebelled. And that is why you must live, he said firmly. Because you carry the memory of resistance. Machines do not understand that. They boarded the ship quickly. Daniel started the engines, and the vessel lifted once more into the sky. The drones appeared behind them, lights flashing, weapons ready. Daniel pushed the ship higher, weaving between clouds of dust. Rena gripped the seat, her knuckles white. We cannot keep running forever. You are right, Daniel said. But if we reach higher ground, we may send a signal. The fleet is near the sector. If they hear us, help will come. The drones fired again. The ship shook with the impact, alarms blaring. Rena cried out, fear rising. But Daniel's voice cut through. Hold on. We are not done yet. He steered the ship sharply toward the tall ridge in the west. The engines roared, and the drones followed. One drone came too close, and Daniel tilted suddenly, causing it to smash against the rocks. Sparks flew, and the machine fell in pieces. Only one drone remained, chasing with steady focus. As they climbed higher, the horizon opened wide. The red sun glowed against the vast plain. Daniel activated the long-range beacon, sending a call into the void. This is Medic Daniel of the human fleet, he spoke firmly. I have a survivor with me. Requesting immediate support. The last drone closed in, its weapon charging. Rena watched with dread. She whispered, we cannot make it. Daniel gritted his teeth. We will make it. Look at me, Rena. Do not look at the machine. Look at me. She turned her eyes to him. His calm gaze steadied her heart. For a moment she felt no fear, only trust. The drone fired. Daniel pulled the ship into a sharp dive, and the beam shot past, missing them by a narrow space. He swung the ship upward again, engines straining. The drone tried to follow but struck the edge of the ridge. It spun out and exploded against the rocks. Silence filled the cabin. The alarm slowed. Rena sat shaking, her hands gripping the seat. Daniel took a deep breath. We are clear. For now. She turned to him, her voice trembling. You saved me again. You could have left me, and yet you keep fighting. He met her eyes. Because you are worth saving, Rena. Do not forget that. Her heart swelled with a feeling she had almost forgotten. Not just relief but hope. She whispered, then I will not forget. Not ever. The ship rose higher, the beacon still sending its call across the stars. And though the planet below remained harsh and broken, Rena no longer felt alone. She had faced hunger, silence, and machines, yet she was alive. And with Daniel beside her, she believed she could face whatever came next. The ship glided across the sky, battered but still flying. Inside, Rena sat quietly, her hands folded on her knees. The hum of the engines filled the silence, but her mind was restless. For the first time in weeks, she was not thinking of hunger or fear. She was thinking of tomorrow. Daniel sat at the control panel, his eyes scanning the blinking lights. The beacon was still sending its call. Somewhere in the distance, he hoped the fleet would hear it. He turned his head slightly and spoke in his calm voice. We are safe for now, but we cannot stay above this world for long. Our fuel is low. We must trust the signal. Rena nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. What if no one hears us? What if the fleet has moved far away? Daniel looked at her with quiet certainty. They will hear. Humans do not abandon their own. We reach for each other, even across the stars. His words settled in her heart like a spark. She wanted to believe, and in his presence, belief came easier. She leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes, letting the steady hum soothe her. As night fell on the planet below, the ship drifted above red deserts and broken mountains. From the window, Rena saw the land where she had almost died. The emptiness, the silence, the ruins of forgotten battles. It felt like another lifetime already. She thought of the girl who had wandered that land alone, weak and lost. That girl had nearly given up. But now she was different. Hours passed. Rena woke suddenly when Daniel touched her shoulder. His face was calm, but his eyes carried urgency. We have a response. Her heart leaped. The fleet. He nodded and pointed to the screen. A faint signal blinked in rhythm. A message came through the static. Medic Daniel, your call is received. This is Vessel Horizon. We are on approach. Hold position. Rena's eyes widened. They are real. They are coming. Daniel gave a small smile. Yes. We only need to wait a little longer. The waiting felt heavy. Every minute stretched like an hour. Rena sat close to the window, searching the stars for any sign of light. Then, at last, she saw it. A glow in the distance, growing brighter, moving steadily toward them. A large ship broke through the clouds, its hull shining silver against the red sky. Rena's breath caught. It is beautiful. The voice of the horizon returned through the COMM. We see your signal. Prepare for docking. Daniel guided their small craft closer. The docking arms of the larger ship extended, locking onto their vessel with a firm pull. The sound of machinery echoed as the two ships joined. For the first time in so long, Rena felt safe walls close around her. The hatch opened. Bright lights spilled in, and figures stepped forward. Humans, wearing uniforms of the fleet. Their faces were firm but kind. One of them, a tall officer, raised a hand in greeting. Medic Daniel. Survivor. You are safe now. Welcome aboard. Rena stood frozen at the sight. She had dreamed of rescue but never truly believed it would come. Now she was standing before people of her own kind. Tears pricked her eyes, though she tried to hold them back. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Go on. You are not forgotten anymore. She stepped forward slowly. Warm hands reached to help her, guiding her into the clean halls of the horizon. The smell of fresh air, filtered and pure, surrounded her. It felt unreal. As they walked deeper into the ship, Rena's senses were overwhelmed. The hallways glowed with steady light. The air carried the faint scent of food. She heard voices, laughter even. It was life, full and unbroken. A medic crew hurried forward, scanning her with gentle machines. One smiled at her. You are weak, but you will recover. We will give you care. Rena whispered, her voice trembling. Thank you. Daniel stayed beside her as they led her to the medical bay. The officers spoke to him with respect, asking about the dangers he faced and the machines that hunted them. But Rena barely heard their words. She was still caught in the wonder of being alive among people again. In the bay, she lay on a clean bed while the medics checked her health. Needles delivered nutrients. Soft cloth replaced her torn clothes. Warm water washed the dust from her skin. She felt human again. Daniel remained at her side. Rest. You have carried too much for too long. Now let others carry you. Her eyes closed, but her mind did not sleep. She thought of her village, her friends, her family who had fought and fallen. She thought of the machines that ruled the ground below. A part of her felt guilty for being here while so many were gone. But another part whispered that survival itself was victory. When she woke, she found food waiting beside her bed. Real food, warm and rich with flavor. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. Daniel sat near the window of the bay, looking out at the stars. She asked softly, "Do you think my people are gone forever?" He turned toward her. "No. As long as you live, they live through you. Your memory, your voice, your story. One person can carry the fire of many. And fire spreads." Her heart tightened at his words. She whispered, "Then I will not let it go out." The days that followed were filled with healing. Rena grew stronger, her body recovering from weeks of hunger and struggle. She learned the routines of the ship. She walked the bright halls, meeting faces that smiled at her, hearing voices that welcomed her. But deep inside, she knew her journey was not only about survival. It was about purpose. She could not simply rest and forget. She wanted to stand again, to honor the fight of her people. One evening, she found Daniel in the observation deck. He stood alone, watching the stars spread endless beyond the glass. She walked beside him and spoke softly. "You gave me life again. But what comes after this life? What do I do now?" He turned his calm gaze on her. "That is your choice, Rena. You are free now. You can rest, or you can rise. What matters is that it is your choice, not the machine's." She stared at the stars, her reflection glowing faintly in the glass. For the first time, she felt the weight of freedom. It was heavy, but it was hers. "I want to rise," she said firmly. "I want to speak. I want others to know what happened on that world. I do not want silence to bury us." Daniel nodded slowly, pride in his eyes. "Then you will. And I will stand with you." Weeks later, when the Horizon joined the main fleet, Rena stood before a gathering of officers and survivors. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke of her journey, of the hunger and the loneliness, of the machines that hunted without mercy, her words grew stronger. She spoke not only for herself but for all who had fallen. And when she finished, the hall was silent for a long moment before it filled with applause. That night, as she stood once more with Daniel by her side, she felt the truth in her heart. She was no longer forgotten. She was part of something greater. She was a voice, a memory, a survivor who had turned despair into hope. The stars stretched endless before them, full of danger but also full of promise. Rena lifted her chin. "This is not the end. It is only the beginning." Daniel smiled gently. "Yes. A new dawn." Together, they looked into the vast sky, ready for whatever future waited beyond.